Our next presenter is Greg Brumfield. Greg is a master taxidermist and the founder of Brumfield Taxidermy. Greg will be discussing field dressing and trophy care. Please welcome Greg Brumfield.
Hello, everybody. First of all, congratulations to everybody in here because you really have something special, something to look forward to. My name is Greg Brumfield, run Brumfield Taxidermy. I'm in Palisade, Colorado. Been doing taxidermy for over 20 years, and I have a booth out there. So after the presentation, if anybody has any questions, anything, feel free to come by. I also this PowerPoint presentation that I'm giving here on trophy field care, I also have the whole thing on DVD at my booth. This is a little edited down version from what my DVD is. My DVD goes through everything very extensively. So at certain points through this, I will ask questions at any time. If anybody does have a question, just raise your hand and we will get you addressed. So with that, we will begin. So, this is called the dorsal line, right down here. When you go to skin an animal for taxidermy work, you always want to make a line, make your cut down the dorsal line. It's always best to use a very sharp knife and make one smooth cut instead of a bunch of jagged cuts. I see that a lot. And I kind of describe it, looks like it was split down the back with a chainsaw, and it makes it very difficult to put things back together in a very nice manner. Clicked too many times. So here I am, I'm making the cut right down the center line, and depending on whether you're going to do a shoulder mount, a half life-size mount, or a full body mount will dictate how far you go. Obviously, if you're going to do a life-size mount, you will take this all the way down to the base of the tail. If you're going to do a shoulder mount or a half life-size mount, take it down. I recommend just in front of the back legs. That way that leaves enough skin and hide to work with. We can always cut some off, but we can't put it back if it's on the mountain. As you can see here, here's my cut going down the dorsal line. Now all my pictures are on a sheep. Same process for a mount goat or any other thing for that matter. So keep that in mind. After you make the cut down the dorsal line, and you will cut it to the base of the tail right here, then you come in on the back side of all four legs, starting above the knee joint right here, and make an incision all the way down the back of the leg to the hoof. Here we are again, and as I say, on sheep, there's a real distinctive white hair pattern that comes down the back side. Just follow down through the center of that. Goats, obviously, it's all white, so you don't have that, but just make sure and come down the center. What I'll see a lot of times is people will have a tendency and they'll come around the front side and then back around like this. That makes it, again, more difficult to hide the seam. If you come down the back, that's the best place. Go in between the dew claws here and go right down to here. And you can dejoint this right in here at this joint. Leave the hoof in. Don't worry about that. We skin that out once we get it. And I recommend cutting it down. You could cut it up at the knee joint. I recommend cutting it down here just to eliminate that bone, which is extra weight. And when you're on the mountain packing stuff out, every ounce counts. Once you got the incision made down the center, just start skinning around the leg, and this is for a life-size mount. Start skinning around the leg like this, all the way around. Once you get it skinned around here, you can de-joint it at the knee just to make it easier to work with, and then later de-joint it right down here. However you find works better for you. A lot of times with sheep and goats, you know, they're in really nasty areas, and it's fairly difficult to work on these, so do the best that you can. Once we've made those incisions down the back legs, then we start skinning, and we just skin each side, peel it down, go all the way around. If you're going to do, there again, a shoulder mount or a half life size mount, you don't have to worry about this area back here. You just cut it all the way around right here in front of the back legs. Start your incision up here between the ears, and then you sever the head. We're not to that point yet, but you'll cut the head off there at the head-neck juncture. I don't go into detail about skinning the face off because you have to bring the entire skull in to get checked. So leave the face on, don't worry about that. We'll get that skinned off, we'll get that all taken care of. Continue skinning. Now on the front legs, right there's the knee joint. And there again, I will start here and I will split down this way. If you're skinning from the top down, you can tube these legs, that's fine. But there again, like I said, a lot of times with a sheep or a goat, they're in a really nasty area. It's hard to do that. It does make it easier if you do make an incision back here where you can get that part skinned out. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll make this skin, I'll go ahead and sever it right here at the knee just to break that away so you're not working with that whole leg. Then once you've got the whole hide off, then you can come in, cut the rest of that bone off right here. And we're not clicking. There we go. Once again, down through the center, right down through these two claws right here. Skin around just like we did on the back legs. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get the 4 legs skinned out first, get that done, get that eliminated so you don't have to deal with that, and then come in and start working it down, and then you work the hide around, pull those legs up through. On the front legs, you definitely, I recommend cutting that joint there at the knee joint. That way when you're pulling the skin, you can pull that skin down and work that leg up through. Now, if you're doing a shoulder mount, you can go ahead and carry this incision up through the armpit. But a tendency that I see people do a lot of times is they come here and then they'll go forward and they cut that brisket too short. They'll have 2 foot of extra skin back here and not near enough here. So, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. So, when you come into the armpit, angle the cut back this way. And then you'll have your center cut up the back that comes around the body, and you will join this cut into here. Any questions at this point? Does anybody have? Yes, sir.
What do you recommend for knives for rams and models? You said you need to get sharp knives, so what do you recommend?
You know, really the best thing is one of those little scalpels.
For the sake of the video, repeat the question for us.
Okay, he asked what type of knife I recommend to make a smooth cut. And as you can see, this is just one smooth. Once I stick that point of that knife in and I start cutting, that is one smooth cut all the way, one continual cut. instead of you go here and then you go here and it gets real jagged. One smooth cut. So the best type of knife for that, you know, a lot of people have a lot better skill at sharpening a knife than other people do. If you do have problems sharpening a knife, one of those little fold-up scalpels work really, really well. You got interchangeable blades. One blade can generally do an entire sheep or goat, but you've got extra blades that you can change out. They're super sharp, very easy to make one continual cut with those. They're very light. You can stick one in your pocket. You know, I don't carry a great big knife with me when I'm out in the woods. Actually, several years ago, I packed back into a place and killed a nice mule deer. And I thought, well, I'm going to skin this thing out for life size. So I started digging in my pockets, and I'd forgot my knife. And I found one scalpel blade. It didn't have a handle to go on it or anything, just the blade. And I worked that whole deer up, quartered it and everything with that blade, holding that blade in my hand. So they're very, very sharp, very effective, but they do work better with a handle. I don't recommend that. You cut a little bit of weight, but it's not worth it in that aspect. Any other questions? So this is the joint right here, and that's where I will sever that joint. And generally, if you just cut through that, cut those tendons a little bit, and then you can break it, and then cut the rest of the tendons and snap it right off. Now, I will say this. When you are cutting the joints, a scalpel is not real good for that. As you can see, I've got just a little plastic-handled, short-bladed knife that there again I can stick in a vest pocket or something like that. It's sharp. Blade's maybe 3 inches long, and that works. Some type, or even a pocket knife, a sharp pocket knife, anything like that. That is what you're going to want to use to de-joint it and cut through those joints. So scalpel blades are thin and they break very easily. So if you start trying to do that kind of stuff, you will break those blades. There's the incision that I've made through that. And then once you make that initial incision, just start breaking against the joint. And you can, there's front legs and back legs both. Just start breaking that joint. Once you get it broke, then you just take your knife, come back in the rest of the way, and cut through it. You can do it with a scalpel, but if you're not careful, you will break those blades. Once again, cutting through the joint. And I've got this skinned all the way around. And you have to skin up into here too. Make sure that you've got this skinned all the way through so you're not cutting that skin when you go to de-joint it. Now I'm working the back legs. And there again, you're going to want to de-joint that at the knee because you skin this all. You stop your incision here at the base of the tail, and then you start skinning this down, and you'll have to skin that down, and then you'll have to come up in through this way and skin a little bit up this way. Skin it all the way around. When you get into the belly area and around the testicles, that skin is very, very thin. It's very easy to cut through. So be very careful there. And then, like on a billy goat or a ram, you don't have to deal with this with a nanny, but skin that skin off of the testicles and leave those testicles intact on the meat, and then you can deal with that when you're quartering it and leave one on the quarters. Don't cut through those and leave those on the skin. That needs to be left on the quarter. Continue skinning down. This first hind leg that you do will be the most difficult part of the whole process because your skin's still on the full body, so you don't have a lot of room and it's pretty tight. Once you get that first hind quarter leg skinned out, popped up through, everything opens up from there, and then the process goes a lot faster. You can do that first leg will probably take just about as long as doing the whole rest of the thing after you've got that first leg out. Any questions on this area? I'm skinning on the inside here. And like I say, and I really do emphasize, you know, skin the testicles out. Don't just cut through and cut them off and leave them on the skin. Continuing to work this down. Here's the tail. And just skinning down through. So here I am, coming up from the knee joint and skinning up this way. Go ahead and cut that knee joint, cut that tendon, skin up this way from the bottom side as far as you can. And then when you skin in from the top, you'll join those two together and completely sever that skin and then just pop that leg through. Continuing. You can see here I've got this skinned out. Now I'm starting to push this up through and pull the skin down where the skin comes over this and opens that up, and you've got that leg free and clear. And once you get that first leg done, the rest of it's gravy. Another picture. You do want to skin the front end up down as far as you can to open all this up so your skin's looser before you start trying to pop this back hind quarter through. So skin the whole thing down as far as you can this way. And then generally what I do, after you've got that first leg, the skin off of it, and that first leg popped through, go ahead and cut that quarter off. And, you eliminate that, and it just makes every quarter that you get cut off, it becomes a little bit lighter, it becomes a little bit easier to work with. And you can cut that quarter off, put it in a game bag, put it somewhere and keep it clean, because once you get this first side, and I do the same thing on the front shoulder, once I've got that popped through, I cut that quarter off, put it in a game bag, put it someplace clean, because what you're going to do after that is you're going to flip the animal over to work on the other side. So you've got those quarters off there, keep them out of the dirt and the leaves and all that kind of stuff, and just keeping them cleaner. Continuing to work and pop these legs through. Can you guys see this all pretty well back there? I've kind of got a little bit different angle here, so does it look pretty descriptive, or? Okay, good deal. Any other questions at this point? I must be doing an all right job, I guess, if nobody has any questions. And again, like I say, I do have this whole entire thing on a DVD, goes through the whole process with me talking at the same time. Very descriptive. And you can get them in my booth, or you can, Google Brumfield Taxidermy, call me up, email me, and I can get a DVD sent to you as well. I'm sure most of you are aware, but there's that little scalpel that I'm talking about. Now I'm working the front leg, and I made the incision up the leg, and I'm skinning, and I do the same thing. You can't skin up real far from the bottom side, from the knee side, but if you'll open that skin up a little bit, then you start skinning from the top, skin it all the way down around, and there again, this skin right in here in this armpit area, it's very thin, so it is very easy to cut through. So you want to be careful about that. I mean, we fix cuts and holes and all that kind of stuff. I got a goat in several years ago, and the guy called me up, and he said, yeah, he goes, I had a little bit of trouble. He goes, it was in a bad spot, and he goes, I didn't do the best job skinning. I'm like, well, I've seen everything. I can deal with it, and probably not a big deal. And I have receiving stations in the Denver area and different parts of the state. So he dropped it off at one of my receiving stations, and made arrangements, I got it picked up, got it back to my shop, got it thawed out. When I thawed it out, not only did it have probably 50 holes, there was about this much skin holding the head on. The entire head was nearly cut off. So, fortunately, it was a goat, and they're a lot more forgiving as far as their hair. We fixed it. You couldn't tell anything was ever wrong with it. If you did something like that on a sheep, you're going to have problems. They're just, you're never going to make it as pretty as what it was. So what I'm getting at is these things can fall in really nasty, nasty areas, and it can be really difficult to take care of them. So, or the weather can turn on you and it can get really nasty, really bad, real quick. So do the best that you can. I don't expect things to be perfect because they never are, but do the best that you can. And just remember that, you know, unlike a deer or an elk or something like that, you know, if you ruin the cape, it's not a big deal to get another cape. When you're talking a sheep or a goat, that's what you got. So, I mean, you can locate them, buy them from different areas. You can't sell sheep capes in Colorado, but they're not cheap. Now I've got this front leg skinned all the way down just about to the knee joint, just about ready to pop that through. And I've severed that joint off as well. Here's my incision. And here's the ears. And I say, you know, right in between the ears and go up maybe an inch or two. Don't worry about, you know, the incision in between the horns or anything like that, trying to skin that off the head, because it's not like you can cut the horns off and leave the head and eliminate weight. You have to bring that out, so don't even worry about skinning the face off. Now I'm opening this up. When you do make the incision here at the ears, sever that ear as close to the head as possible. A lot of times people will cut it clear up into here, and it makes what's called that ear butt short, and it's harder to do the ear in that case. I mean, not something I can't do, but it's better if you cut it right next to the head, and you'll just cut right down through, and you'll cut through that cartilage and open that up. Some of you may have done a lot of this. Some of you may have never done any of it at all before. So like I say, at any point in time, you know, questions, ask me. Feel free to stop by, talk to me. Now I'm skinning around the neck, skinning that down just the same way as I did on the rest of the body. It's the same procedure for mountain goats. On a half-life size, what we do is cut it all the way around the entire body. Basically, you're not cutting the body in half, but you're cutting the skin in half. Come right in front of the back legs. That leaves us enough cape. Make an incision all the way around and do that. That's about the first thing I do. Then make your incision down the dorsal cut like this. On a mountain goat, the only difference is their dorsal line is the mane that runs down the back of the hide. What I recommend is just go off to the side of the mane, right where the skin and the mane start growing long. And the reason for that is the hair is shorter there. It's easier to get your knife in there. It's easier to make that cut. If you're going right down the center, you're fighting and dealing with all that real long hair, and it just makes it harder to cut through it and make a nice smooth cut. Do the back of the legs, open that up, and then you can either follow this line in here, trailing back to this cut, just like that, up through the armpit and back, or you can tube it down. Either way is fine. Just if you do make this cut, and I'm emphasizing this, I know I've already said it, but if you do make this cut, go backwards, not in between and straight across, because then you're cutting this area short and there's not enough area in the brisket area for a mount. Same thing for a shoulder mount or a half life size. Cut it back here, leave plenty of skin. On a mountain goat, you always want to try and keep the hide as clean as possible. A mountain goat, they're white. Yes, sir.
Is there a difference if you're cutting from the head to the tail or tail to the head as far as the grain of the comb, the hair, what's the easier cuts, bigger, cleaner cuts?
Yeah, his question was, does it make a difference whether you start at the head and cut down or if you start at the tail and cut up? It's always best to start at the head and go down, and that way you're going with the grain of the hair. If you start at the tail and come up, you're going against the grain. It's a lot more noticeable on a sheep than it is on a goat. Goats have more of a fur type hair, similar to like a fur bear, a coyote, a fox, something like that. Sheep have the actual hair, it's brittle. You know, a goat you can just take like this, it's really soft, the hair goes anyway. Sheep, like a deer, you know, if you go like this, you're going against that grain, that hair stands up. It's a lot more coarse and more rigid. So you always want to go from the head down. Same thing on the legs. You want to start up here and cut downwards this way instead of starting. If you start down here and cut up this way, you're going to be cutting some of that hair. And that hair is going to be cut right there on that incision, and it's going to make it more difficult to stitch that back up and completely hide that incision. Yes, sir.
What would you do different if you're doing a rug versus a full size?
Okay, so if you're doing a rug, you're going to do a belly incision. You can do a belly incision for a life size as well. And sometimes, you know, if it isn't a really nasty spot, a belly incision might be a little bit easier, faster way to do that. The way you do a belly incision is you go right up the center, right up in between the front legs, and stop right about the front of the brisket. Then this is where you will make your cut on the back side, but then here at this joint right here, you will angle the cut straight across. So coming up the back side, when you hit here, instead of angling back like this for a shoulder mount, you'll bring it straight across. And that's, a lot of people will do that and bring it straight across on a shoulder mount, and that's where you're losing this brisket and it's too short in here for the shoulder mount. But on a rug, you want to come straight across like this. Join that cut into here, cut on the inside and then to the back. Open that up. There again, try and make a straight and even cut. If you get off on a rug, you're going to have one side that's bigger than the other side. And you're going to have like way out here and here. And it's lopsided, and that doesn't look good. And there's not a lot that you can do to change that. Then on the back legs, you go there again, straight up the back of the leg. Just follow that back of the leg all the way up to the anus and open it up that way. Go straight down the center, go through, split the testicles in two, right up the center, right up to the anus, and open it up that way. Now, if you were going to do a belly incision for a life size, you're going to want to go off to the side of the testicles instead of split those in two. That way you leave that whole sac intact and not split. And I've got them in where the sac split in four. There again, on a goat, it's not as big a deal because they have a lot of hair. You can hide it. A goat's a lot more forgiving than a sheep. This belly hair and all this in here on a sheep, very short, and you can't hide anything. And that's why I like a dorsal cut. It's a lot easier to hide that stuff and you know, not have any stitches or anything like that, any seam lines showing. Did that answer your question? So, yeah, just straight across like this, straight down the center, right up to the anus, right up the back of the legs to the anus, and that basically kind of triangles in right at the base of the tail. The tail is cartilage, and just there again, a sharp knife right at the base of the tail. You can cut through that, sever that off the body. You can go ahead and leave the tail in. We'll get that skinned out. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Okay, that's an age-old question, and that's one of the things that everybody, salt the cape. You do not want to salt that cape unless it is entirely fleshed and everything. And when I say entirely fleshed, there's a huge a lot of people think that you bring a cape into the taxidermist, we skin it off the head and put it in salt. That's not the case. Once it's skinned off the head, we have hours in getting the ears turned inside out, getting the lips completely split, getting all that meat taken off of them, getting the eyes and the eyelids split all the way down to the follicle, opening all that up, getting the nose split open, getting all that cartilage peeled out of the nose, getting all the fat membrane off of the hide and the body, and getting the hooves skinned out all the way down to the base knuckle. Hours worth of stuff. You do not want to salt a cape unless all that has been done. What salting does is it dries the skin out, it sucks the moisture out of the hide, which in turn sets the hair follicle in and locks it in, and that's what preserves it. Salting will do all that, but if there's membrane, hide, it will dry and penetrate the fat, the meat that's left on. It won't penetrate through to the skin and actually set the skin. So those areas will slip. If you salt the face and you haven't turned the lips, turned the ears inside out, it dries that out, and then it becomes impossible to actually split and turn all that. So salting actually does more damage than it does good. The other thing is, if you salt something and you put it in the freezer, it will not freeze. Salt eliminates the freezing process out of it. So you've got a salted cape where the salt's not penetrating. It's stuck in a freezer so it doesn't freeze to slow down any of that bacteria growth. Bacteria starts the second the animal dies. It starts breaking the skin down, and that's why it's very imperative to keep the skin as cool as possible. Now during September, when the majority of the sheep hunts are going, a lot of the mountain goat hunts are going, up in the high country it's cold, it's cool, and you can generally get that hide cooled out pretty quick. Basically what you want to do is you want to fold the hide skin to skin and place it someplace where it's cool. Keep it as cool as possible and get it out as quickly as you possibly can. A lot of times, depending on where you're at, you know, that's tough. But if you get it cool as possible, then once you get it off the mountain, and depending on how far of a transport that you have, you want to either get some dry ice, and if it's a mountain goat, generally you can get a cooler, and you can place the whole thing in the cooler, put some dry ice in there. That dry ice will freeze that hide. If it's a big enough cooler, you can get a sheep in there. If you don't have a cooler that the sheep will fit into, you can get a heavy-duty garbage bag, like a contractor bag that's real heavy. Put it in that, put the dry ice in there, and it will work on freezing that down and cooling that down. Then either get it into the Game and Fish and get it checked, or get it in the freezer as quickly as possible. If you, 5 days to get it checked? 5 business days, correct? Excluding weekends. So say if you killed it on a Wednesday, you got it off the mountain on Friday, couldn't get a hold of Game and Fish to seal it, you are going to want to put that in the freezer. You're either going to want to get it in, get the head, get it to the taxidermist, get the head and everything skinned off or the hide skinned off the head, get the hide frozen, and then you'll take the head into the Game and Fish to get it properly checked, or get it in the freezer. Now, you will want to pull that out of the freezer prior to taking it in to the Game and Fish to check, so it's not frozen like a brick, so they can do that. It does not hurt to, best case scenario, if you can get it into the Game and Fish, get it checked, get it to the taxidermist. If you can't, pull it out, like the night before, get it into the Game and Fish the next morning. It'll thaw out enough for them to be able to do what they need to do. Put it back in the freezer. That's a question that a lot of people have. Well, once I froze it, pulled it out, is it going to hurt it if I put it back in the freezer? No, it's not going to hurt it if you put it back in the freezer. You just don't want to leave it out, because like I say, that bacteria and that spoilage will set in immediately and it'll start. And once it starts, you can't stop it. Cool, cold, frozen. Remember that. You don't want to lose one of these skins, because like I said, they're not easily replaced. Yes, sir. Okay, yeah, I was going into that, and then I got sidetracked. You want to keep blood out as best as you possibly can. A mountain goat is more like a sponge, and they want to soak that blood up. They want to absorb that blood, and it's very, very difficult to get one of them skinned out and not get blood in the hide. That's all right. Try and keep it as clean as possible. We put them through an extensive whitening process, washing process. That's another thing I do with the mountain goats. When I get them in, if they are real blood stained, we get them washed out, cleaned out, very, very good. But the difference is we have the skin fleshed and ready to go in the salt. If you add moisture, you're speeding up the bacteria process. So we get everything fleshed, ready to go in the salt, then we wash it, get all the blood out, everything that we can, and then we put it immediately in the salt. So a lot of times what people will do, they'll want to try and go ahead and wash that stuff out. Say if there's a creek or something up on the mountain, then you've got the hide that's wet. You're adding a lot of weight to try and pack off the mountain. You've added moisture. You don't have it froze yet. You're opening it up to some bacteria growth. So don't worry about that. We will keep it as clean as the better job that you do, the better job that I can do. One of the age-old sayings is, "I'll let the taxidermist deal with that. He can fix it." Well, yeah, for the most part, usually we can. But, if it's terrible, we do the best we can, but we're not going to make it perfect. If it gets into something really extensive, like the goat I was telling you about earlier, there usually is an extra charge, because you're talking maybe 10 hours additional time just in sewing something back together to get it to where it was before all the damage was done. So don't have that philosophy that, the taxidermist can fix it. He can do anything. We can only do as good as what you guys do. The better job you guys do, it helps us out. As they said earlier, basically anymore, we're talking about a once-in-a-lifetime tag. Take care of this, do your research. Have a plan before you're up on the mountain. Don't shoot that animal and say, "Wow, I didn't expect to get something like this. Man, I got to do something with it," and have absolutely no idea what you're going to do. Contact me. Like I said, Brumfield Taxidermy. You can Google me. I've got cards. I've got all that. You should have got a literature on me in your packets that you received, and make a plan, set up, like as for myself, where my receiving stations are, what we need to do to get a hold of that, get this animal taken care of, because you don't want to lose that hide. Do you have a question, or are you stretching? Okay. Other questions? always take care of your meat. Number one priority. I had an instance several years ago, and a guy killed a goat, got the hide off, packed the hide out, went back up, and went to get his meat. Well, the meat had spoiled, and he calls me and he's like, yeah, I'm like, well, I can't testify for you and say that you did what you were supposed to do. You have to take care of that meat. That is the number one priority. You don't want to lose the skin, but you don't want to lose that meat either. And the meat's very good, always one of the number one reasons you're out there. Game bags. Game bags are a good idea. They're light. They don't add weight. They'll help you keep the meat clean, help you keep the stuff off. They do help keep the bugs off to a degree. It's almost entirely impossible to keep flies away and out of anything other than a freezer, but they do help. So they're light. I recommend some kind of meat bag along with you. Also, take the hide, put the hide in a meat bag. Now, on that, if you can, on the hide, if you can put that thing somewhere to cool out first before putting it in a meat bag. If you skin it off immediately, stuff it right in the meat bag, there's going to be heat that's held in there, more especially in the center, that isn't allowed to dissipate. So try and get that hide off, lay it out, and let that thing cool out to some degree before you go stuffing it in a meat bag. So all these points right here, I think we pretty much covered. We got 3 minutes. Questions? Yes, sir.
If you're talking about dry ice to cool the hide, can you make it, can the dry ice be too cold? Or is colder is better, right?
So he asked, can dry ice be too cold? Always leave the dry ice in the brown bag that it comes in. It's not going to be too cold. It will freeze, What I do recommend is right up here at this juncture of the head and the neck, where that trachea is still in there. I put a little bit of dry ice in that area, and then I'll just put another piece of dry ice in the cooler or in the bag. This area right here with that trachea held in there, very prone to slippage. Put that dry ice right in there. That'll freeze that. That'll eliminate that. Dry ice is better because there's no moisture. Regular ice, when it melts, it's liquid, it's moisture. Moisture, hides, not a good combination. It's better than nothing, but it's not as good as dry ice. I think there was another question. Yes, sir. A lot of people will do a shoulder mount and they will have the back hide tanned. And I have rugged out the back hide. Depending on, are you talking a mountain goat? Yeah. Depending on the size of the goat is going to depend on how much the back hide there is. Some of your smaller nannies, you're talking a piece about like this by this. It's not very big. A bigger billy, it's going to be bigger. But on goats, a lot of times people do have the back half tanned and have something done with it, yes. Yes. I always recommend if you're undecided what type of mount you want, and you think you might want a life size, it's going to add a little bit of weight, but bring the whole hide out, because you can make a decision, once you cut it, that's it. You're locked into a different time. And I've had a lot of people do that, and then afterwards they're like, man, I wish I'd have saved it for a life size mount. So if you're undecided, bring the whole thing out. Other questions? Yes, sir. So that is a very good question. Skin to skin, roll it up. How do you do it before you put it in the freezer? The best way to do it is fold it up skin to skin and then fold it basically in half. If you just roll it up really tightly and stick it in the freezer, the outside's going to freeze long before the inside of that skin freezes. and the inside of that skin may hold heat and it may create a problem. Basically fold it in half and lay it in the freezer as flat as you possibly can. Don't roll it up tight and then stick it in the freezer. I think we're out of time. Once again, Greg Brumfield, Brumfield Taxidermy. I have a booth. Feel free to come by, stop, ask questions. I'll answer anything I can. Thank you guys very much. Best of luck to all of you.